I actually sort of started a career here in Watkins, if you could actually really call it a career. But Watkins had an esoteric centre, there's just a few doors up. And it was in this bookshop that I used to come in when I first moved to London. I was probably about like 21, 22, when they were still calling things a cult before it became Mind, Body, Spirit, which says probably quite a lot about my age. Shouldn't have said that. Anyway, so I used to come in here and I used to kind of like pull all of the books out, and it's a little bit like, you know, that scene on Wayne's World when he says, "Oh yes, it will be mine," when he's staring at the guitar. Well, Watkins was like that with me. I was like, one day I'm going to work there, one day this is going to be the place that I'm going to work. And of course that happened, as things usually do. You do know what's going to happen, and these things happen. And so I started, in a sense, this path as what you might call a psychic reader. And what started to change for me was that the word psychic it wasn't quite fitting right. There was something that was missing, there was something that just wasn't working. And I gained a lot of notoriety. I had a radio show on LBC, which was really great. It was called The Psychic Show. And I kind of like would swing between this pendulum of being called a brazen cow by Derren Brown in his book Tricks of the Mind, which frankly he was right, to sort of like swing back into this kind of belief that I had supernatural powers and that there was something really special about me that was more special than anything else. And it didn't sit right. I mean, and certainly I know that everything works on polarities, and so something didn't completely sit right, in actual fact, about the whole way the psychic thing was being done. Because to me, people were coming to try and avoid spiritual breakthrough, rather than actually have a spiritual breakthrough by coming for a reading. So they were trying to avoid pain. And I discovered that the tools that I was using in my readings were what's known as the gut instinct. So what you're basically doing with the gut instinct is you're looking out for problems and you're trying to avoid pain. So how this actually works is your solar plexus chakra, which is about here, fuzzy yellow energy, frisks people. Are you all frisked? You may have liked it when you came in. Frisked all of you for information, to see which one of you are spies, which one of you is working for the government. Now, I'm not really that paranoid, but I was frisked you all. And that information comes back into the sacral chakra and is interpreted by the gut brain. There actually is a brain in your gut. So it's got the similar kind of like vagus nerves and all of these other things of the brain in your head, and very similar matter. And so the gut brain actually interprets these things, and you might have experienced things like, you say, "Oh, I felt like I've been punched in the stomach," or "I felt sick with blah blah blah," or "I had butterflies." Well, you're talking about, that's your gut-led intuition, and it is in charge of the flight or fight response. It makes you move away from things rather than to things. And so whilst I was doing all of these psychic readings, I found that I was actually just telling people how to really live a narrow life, how to avoid pain. And of course, I don't know if any of you have experienced pain. I mean, let's face it, why would you be here if you hadn't experienced pain? But pain is some of the greatest lessons that we ever actually go through. For me, though, I want to know why. Why am I going through hell? Or why am I in crisis? Or why am I having problems? Those are the things that I'm fascinated by. And this form of intuition didn't tell me that. It just told me how to avoid it and how to get away. So I kind of packed up my whole life, really, in search of this answer, because I had this intuitive impulse to move to San Francisco. So I sold my house, gave away all my stuff, very cathartic, apart from trying to buy it all back, and it's not so cathartic, it's bloody expensive. So anyway, got rid of all of my stuff in a very spiritual manner, took the dog and moved to San Francisco. And while I was there, I cleared the space for what you might call like a download to happen, and I suddenly realised that there had to be a second form of intuitive knowing, and that is the heart. And what it feels like is this expansive feeling, and there actually is, again, another brain in the heart, again, the same kind of matter as the brain in the head, and it makes you feel like, yes, that I'm moving towards that. The problem with it is it has absolutely no words. So you will know that you need to move into a particular direction, but you won't know why you know. You'll just know. And that feeling of, I know that I need to do this, and then you get caught up in your head and kind of like go, "Oh yeah, but da 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 da," and if you can't rationalise in the way that we're taught to at school, by breaking things down, by looking at the positives and negatives, by analysing it, if you can't break it down, then you usually discount it, especially if it doesn't have any words. Yet there are multiple ways of knowing. And if there's multiple ways of knowing what we know, then the analytical mind isn't always going to be the thing that has all of the answers. Now, why I believe that this is perfectly, really, really important is because when you're having the gut responses to things, you get scared. And of course, fear does a really remarkable thing. it puts you into that flight or fight mode. There's actually kind of like 5 Fs. I only talk about 4 in the book because one of them's rude. But it explains for the baby boom after the war, just saying. So you've got fear, flight, fight, food, and flee, I think. Anyway, something like that. And what that basically does is it puts blood into the arms and legs so that you have the sense to run. The reason why we might overeat or eat a lot is so that we've got the energy to put the blood in the arms and legs so that we can run. Now, yeah, that's fairly basic, and we know that stress is really bad for you, but why is it bad? Because the blood is being taken away from the stomach. And when it's being taken away from the stomach, it was doing something before it got taken away. It was helping the immune system, and it was also helping the digestive system. So this is why lots of people suffer from like IBS or like lots of just like the problems that we're having now, and why lots of people get sick when they're stressed, because the blood isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. So in the book You Do Know, on a personal level, I'm really talking about how you can make decisions like that, because then you're not analysing, you're not worrying, you're not thinking about things, you're just literally saying, right, this is right for me, this is the direction that I need to go on, and you act upon it instantly, because the more you're worrying about things and stewing them up in your mind, well, you're making yourself sicker and you're depleting your energy system, so that's not much fun. The second reason that I wrote the book is because we're secretly quite scared of each other, believe it or not. So one of the reasons why we're frisking people with our solar plexus is because people are a little bit scary. They have a thing called an ego, and it's a little alarming, some of the things that the ego does. So the reason why we're scared of each other, we really could solve all of the problems that we have in the world if we just came together in community. But we don't, because I want to be in community, but not with that person, because I don't like that person. That person's like, there's something about their vibe. There's something about that person that I don't like, and I don't want them to be part of my community, and blah, blah. So we expel people. And then we go, well, I'm not coming back next week if he's here. And so we don't end up getting anything done. We just spend a lot of time criticising each other for not doing it. Yet, when you're using your heart-led intuition, you're actually able to analyse whether or not that person is really genuinely scary, or whether or not they remind you of your maths teacher who used to point out things about how dumb you were at the board. This is a little bit of an autobiographical speech, you can tell. So at the end of the day, when we feel like we can start trusting each other because we can read them intuitively and see whether or not something is somebody else's stuff due to their fear of you, which is often the case, or whether or not it's down to your stuff because you don't like them because of something that's happened to your past, you can heal it. You can do something about it. So really, this form of intuition, when Einstein said that you can't solve the same problems with the same level of consciousness that created them, this to me is a different level of consciousness. This is a different way of being able to communicate with each other and being able to kind of interact, which means to me that, well, let's face it, not to just put too massive deal on it, I think it could go some way to causing world peace. No pressure anyone, but you know, it would be nice if I was right. So really, when you can trust yourself, you make good decisions for yourself and for everybody around you in your community. That is not only life-changing, that is world-changing. That's why I wrote You Do Know, because you do know. And in actual fact, I have written the book that is very likely to put me out of business. Because 9 times out of 10, when somebody now comes to see me for what I call an intuitive consultation, because I now understand that the way that my brain works due to dyslexia, I'm highly intuitive because my right hemisphere of my brain works a lot better than the left hemisphere of my brain, which is the logical maths, physics, chemistry, English side, which I didn't do too well in at school. But I'm really great at being able to read people. And so because of this, people now come and see me. I don't declare I have special powers. I just basically have something that everybody has, but mine is more in tune because of dyslexia. So then I'm much able to read people. And you know, the daft thing is, usually at the end of the consultation, they say, oh my God, that was life-changing. I feel so much better. Thank you so much. Okay, that was a sales pitch. They usually say, no, they do say that. But they usually say, do you know what? I already knew. That's exactly what I was thinking. And so I'm doing myself out of business because this book teaches you how to trust that. So you don't have to come back and see me, you don't have to go and see anybody, because you already know all of the answers inside of yourself. It's just the fact that we don't know how to trust that form of intuition because we're usually using the gut instead of the heart. So that's why it's life-changing. So I would like to open up the floor, but before I do, there's one take-home thing that I would like you to take with you. That's the key on how to access this form of intuition. Curiosity. I'd like to say open your chakras, turn around 3 times and spit, but no. If you've ever been travelling and you know you're kind of like looking at the tops of buildings and you're like going, wow, this is really interesting, and it's a lot hotter or a lot colder, or it smells different, or it's just exciting, it's tangible, and you're in a different place and you feel alive and electric, you're curious. And then of course you meet great people. You meet people that are going to carry your bag, and the chances of finding romance and getting laid are kind of like tripled. You know, you suddenly open up. Well, here's the key. Do this in your normal life. Just walk around being curious. Just be curious about people. Just be curious when you're in the pub, not too curious. Just be curious. And you'll find that all of those interactions that you normally have on holiday, all of these wonderful things that suddenly happen, all of these synchronicities are accessible all of the time when your heart is open. So curiosity is the key to this form of intuition, and that's really all you really need to be doing to kind of do that. Now obviously there's lots more details on how to make that possible in the book, because you're going to be like, yeah, but what if I'm being curious and someone else isn't, and da-da-da, and you know, and how does that help when people are asking me for money? And so there's lots of information in the book about how to kind of like navigate life with this new form of curiosity, because otherwise you can attract an awful lot of attention. But I'd like to open it up to questions. If there's anything that you want to know about what I've said, life, the universe and everything, I know everything, so just ask me.
And also you said about being open-hearted.
Absolutely, because the opinion goes into the left hemisphere of the brain, and the opinion is always about keeping yourself safe.
Right.
So your opinion is always about, if I'm right about this person, then I can protect myself from them.
Yeah.
So when you have an opinion about somebody, it's usually negative or they're cute.
So box them off somewhere rather
you
than
box them, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then actually when you become curious about them, you usually realise that the reason why you didn't like them, or you felt kind of removed from them, or is old patterns and stereotyping.
Right.
So they've actually discovered this in racism. They have actually done experimentations to actually, like, you know, experimentations sounds like someone was probed, but no. They've actually looked at the amount of black people who are racist against black people, which doesn't make any sense, but on fast reactions to photographs and pictures, and aligning those with words, and realisations of mass stereotyping that we are either given by the media or that we're given in other ways. And so to me, the only way to free yourself from mass stereotyping and the images that you're given by all sorts of media things. I was a bit cross about Doctor Who the other day for one of these things, and I love Doctor Who. But you can actually start to see people as people instead of being people as a system of responses due to this behavioural patterning.
Right.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Brilliant one. Yes?
So do you find yourself in life having sort of compartmentalising problems? So some problems you'll allow your gut to make a quick decision, and other problems you say, well, that needs a little bit more analysis, such as choosing a mortgage provider. You might not make a sudden decision.
Well, I mix the two. So if my gut reacts to something, then there'll be a reason why, and my gut is always trying to protect me from something. So then I'm very much my own psychologist. So I'll want to know, why is my gut trying to protect me from something? So then I become curious about what my gut is trying to protect me from. So it might be something, let's use what you came up with about mortgage providers. So I might have a gut instinct about this mortgage thing. Now it could be because in the past my mother had a mortgage with that particular person, and say she couldn't afford the repayments, and then we got evicted. Now this mortgage provider might have kind of like got its ethics or its stuff together or something and changed, but my old behavioural pattern is still going to be triggered by the fear of that word. And it can even be that somebody has said to you, oh, you know, I really can't stand Lloyds. You know, it stays in your head, and it's kind of, in a sense, it's something that we do about people, which is what I call dripping poison. So we'll say, oh, such and such is a really bad person, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a statement, but that's actually just your opinion. And it may be your opinion of that moment. Like, if you catch me on a bad day, yeah, you might go around going, oh my God, I met that Becky Walsh and she's a complete cowbag. You know, and that may be true in that moment, and there will be moments like that. But you've got to figure out whether or not it's true for you. So when you have a gut instinct to something, become curious about it, and then your curiosity will feed a yes or a no response. Good. Yes, quite often we're worried that they're going to ask for money or something crazy or whatever, and so we don't connect. But what you're feeling is you're feeling her curiosity about whether or not it's safe to talk to you. And we can feel, it's almost like an energetic kind of like sense. You know, when you kind of, you cross, I did it earlier, I crossed the road and there was somebody just in front of me. And as we're kind of like crossing the road, you could feel this kind of like connection between the two of us. And as we got to the other side of the road, he stopped, turned round and said, Do you know where Leicester Square is? It's there. You know, very easy. And it's just, but you know, and he's got his back to me. He's already extending, and it can be coming from the solar plexus, but his whole energy system to see who is available.
I mean, that's what I felt. I felt as if there was a kind of a presence, but coming out and around us, you know, far out from her, right across. And
Well,
as
that's
I got
brilliant.
near, it just stayed constant. I often sense closedness when a person or a stranger doesn't want to talk, and you can feel
And
it.
that closes down too.
And
Well,
they
you've actually
close.
just described the two forms of intuition, so that's brilliant. Thank you for that, because you are now a living, walking example of what I'm talking about. So that's really good.
Supposing you're considering an issue and you have conflicting feelings about it, how do you know which feeling?
Intuition feels expansive. Gut feels closed and kind of withdrawn, and head feels rotational. So you know how we kind of like feel like we're thinking in circles, but I'll give you an exercise to do. So the way to take this exercise is to try it first of all with some obvious objects. Get say fizzy drink, Coke, other brands may, and some water, and make sure you don't know which is Coke and which is water. Sort of stand like this so that you can tip easily. Put one over your heart and see if you move forward, and put the other one over your heart and see if you move backwards. That tells you to use your body as kind of like, this is called somatic intuition. There's a clip on my YouTube channel, Becky Walsh Intuition, that actually shows how to do this in case you're lost. But it actually tells you what's yes for you and what's no for you. Then, if you've got a decision to make, write it down on a piece of paper, because the vibration of words holds a heck of a lot of energy. But also put it with a complete blank piece of paper. So it might be, say for example, if it's like, shall I move to Norway? Then you'd put Norway on that piece of paper and a blank piece of paper, so that you've got something to contrast against. If you've kind of like got, shall I move to Dublin or Norway, then put Dublin on the other piece of paper, and then you've got something to contrast against. So then put it on your heart when you don't know which piece of paper you've got, and see how your body responds to it, because your body has a heck of a lot of knowing, and actually knows what your subconscious mind is telling you that your conscious mind is battling with. So that would be one way of being able to kind of really discern and kind of make it clear. Good?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about, I followed my intuition to move to Los Angeles, and it ended up being a total nightmare. Now, I don't know, that's a major moving decision to move country. Now I don't know how to trust then that intuition.
Well, I did exactly the same thing with the move to San Francisco. And you know, you can look at it and you can think, oh well, that should have all been roses. However, sometimes your intuition is telling you to do something that you need to do for the higher purpose that you've actually got going on in your life. And some things are just like finishing school. You know, that you know you need to do it. So for me, I was dead set on being signed by Hay House. I was dead set on getting a really great book out into the world that was revolutionary, and I didn't have it. I didn't have it either. There was a couple of things that I'm really grateful for Hay House for. One of the things was saying to me, we love you, we love your work, you think you're great, but you're not ready. There's something about you that's not ready. And I'd be like, I am, and I bloody well wasn't. And so, in actual fact, going through quite a lot that I went through with going to San Francisco was tweaking. And so, in a way, you don't quite know what the whole point is, but there's a bigger picture going on, that the thing that you really want, sometimes you have to go right the way around the houses to actually get it, but you just don't know it at the time. So, I don't know, maybe you won't know now, maybe it will kind of like come out later, and maybe it's just about the expectation of what you thought was going to be there is something else. It's very, very difficult, and then sometimes we think it's our intuition when it's blind, desperate hope. So I always think double check everything with curiosity. So if you double check it with curiosity, then that's a really good idea, because otherwise I'd be chasing around men called Eddie for the amount of Eddie stubbo trucks that go past. Be like, Eddie, it's a sign! You know, so it's a really good idea to kind of just double check everything with yourself before we kind of start getting excited about things that are just a bit avoidance of pain in other ways. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, getting back to the curiosity, it sort of chimed with me, because it's something I've been trying to nurture and trying to hold on to for years, and it's something I'm to be proud of the fact that I've got a nice, curious nature. I'd like to think I have. But one thing that helps as well with that is a way of noticing the everyday and how unique everything is. Not taking anything for granted is wonderful. What else helps is being like in a situation in London, is being open and totally unstressed, being totally relaxed. If you can hold that in Leicester Square, or as I used to every morning and evening in Paddington Tube Station, and not being part of a rushing crowd, if you can be at your own pace, however deliberately slowing down, then you're more open
Yeah.
to everything
Absolutely.
around you.
I think it was Eckhart Tolle that basically said, you know, there was a lady that was talking to him and saying, you know, I've just become a mum and I feel like I'm off my spiritual path. I was doing all of this great spiritual study and all of this fantastic stuff, and now I'm a mum. I feel like I've just cut off that side of myself. And he went, if you can be spiritual with a screaming baby that doesn't make you kind of like pull your own hair out when you've had no sleep, then you're not off your spiritual path. And sometimes actually, and this is one of the great things that I believe in, is it's fantastic to be an angel when your feathers are not ruffled. And I'm all for getting out of the bedroom and staring at your navel and meditation, and although it absolutely has its place. But again, like you're saying, if you can be meditative in a public space, then that's amazing. Apart from people who are meditating in a public space when I'm trying to get somewhere, and then you can jolly well get out of my way, I have a cappuccino and I mustn't spill it. And so, you know, it's difficult because you've got to be in flow with life rather than kind of like against the flow of life. Yeah, exactly. Apart from the naked man in San Francisco Underground, but that's a whole different story.
I deny everything.
I thought I reckoned, anyway.
Interesting what you said about the ego. Something I've noticed quite a lot recently is I meet someone socially or professionally. There's a kind of initial ego reaction, which is, you know, something I don't like about them, and it's becoming almost predictable. I just know, okay, so I've got this ego. It's a bit like kind of shell survey, and then it only takes a certain amount of time before you connect with them.
Yeah, it does.
So my question is, at some point, do you kind of just get bored with that and just say, okay, it's the shell, let's wait for it to go away, and then just connect with people? Does that kind of gradually erode that initial ego reaction?
Hold on. Okay, so I'm going to answer that really personally. Which is one of the things that people ask me a lot when they find out that I'm really highly intuitive, and they say, oh, what do you see about me? Or are you seeing this all of the time? Or what did you think of me? Da, 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 da. And the thing is actually I've spent my life trying to find somebody weird, trying really hard, and I've gone to some underground, very strange places looking for oddballs, or at least someone weirder than me. And I find that everyone at a very core level is just pure love. And so there are multiple levels of shell, as you've described it, that people put up. But more interestingly is all of the blocks that I put up to avoid loving. And so when I meet someone, it's not really them that I'm analysing. It's not really I'm waiting for the shell of me understanding them. It's the fact that I'm waiting for I kind of like call it, if you imagine that at the point of creation there was a huge mirror that suddenly smashed into a million pieces. And we all have a shard of that mirror in our hearts. And most of the time we walk around with the dull side of the mirror around because we do not want to feel connected, because the idea of being completely in the presence of love or that form of divinity is proper scary. It's usually when I'm waiting for that piece of mirror to turn round. But I actually, personally, I don't want it round all the time. I don't want to be reading people all the time. I don't want to be connecting in love with people all the time. I just want to be getting on with my stuff. I've got stuff, you know, and I just want to just be getting on with life. It's only when I realise that I have become the living dead and I am not connecting with me, anyone, anything, that I have just become kind of like, you know, everything's pointless, what's the point? And started to become fixated on wanting to feel better, like by buying stuff or by whatever it is. I suddenly have that wake up moment where I suddenly realise I've become asleep whilst asleep instead of awake to the fact that I'm asleep. But I don't spend too much time trying to be awake all of the time and trying to be awake to everybody else. I get on with having a jolly good time in the physical world, and I get on with a jolly good time of sitting on the tube, you know, that kind of like going up the escalators. There's a comedian that does this and I think it's brilliant, you know, when you kind of like going up the escalators and going twat, 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 oh they're nice, twat, twat. That's absolutely okay. That's fine. I can't go on the escalators going divinity, 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 divinity. It's just a bit exhausting. So I think rather than waiting for the block to go away, it's be curious within the block rather than be curious and try and take the block down, because otherwise you'll just actually end up hurt, because you're just going to keep running into other people's boundaries. And someone once described me as being like a person who sits on other people's walls of defence and goes, "Are you alright? Wall, you okay? Do you want a hand up?" And they built that wall for a reason. Leave them alone. You know, and of course they build another wall and then you think they don't like you. But it's simply because you're sitting on that wall. So I try really hard not to sit on people's walls if I can help it. It's a long way to fall. Other questions? Brilliant. I always think when questions run out, either I've been amazing and I've managed to actually explain everything properly, or it's like, shut up, we're bored now. So so I'll take it as it being the first one, and just to say thank you very much for coming. I'm going to hang around.